So very good evening to all of you. I'm Shivi. Today I will be taking up the insights and analysis of 2022 art and culture questions. So there are 3 questions in the paper which I will be taking up. But besides telling you the answer approach to those questions, it's very important because, if you don't understand what needs to be done for a particular subject, your whole idea of joining this session will be unfruitful, right? So what we will be doing up is that apart from discussing the questions, I will be telling you the future approach towards this subject. Now, the kind of questions which have come in UPSC, they are directly or indirectly related to UPSC syllabus. But there is a twist, because the kind of language and the understanding which UPSC is expecting out of you from different subjects and also art and culture is little bit twisted. What is that approach, or what is that underlying idea, what they want to need to, or what they want to see it in you, right? So when we understand the type of questions this year, as well as in the last 5-6 years, so basically the nature of questions in art and culture, you can classify them into 3 types. One is your content specific questions, which is purely static, right? You either know them or you don't know them. Second type of questions is again content specific but applied in nature, as to understand whatever you have learned, are you able to apply or relate the understanding in different dimensions, right? So this is very important, because these are the type of, again, questions which are coming in UPSC, and that too in art and culture as well. Third type of questions are dynamic, current affairs related questions, but again linked with static portions. Now, when you are reading newspaper, you also need to be aware of how questions are being tied with static UPSC syllabus, right? And there is a question in this year's paper which will, again give you an insight as to how you have to prepare the subject, right? So whenever we are talking about mains, there are 4-5 things which you have to look into. One is, needless to say, syllabus. Second, understanding the demand of the question. Third, nature of questions, and this will be helped by seeing UPSC previous years papers, right? And assessment of words and marks weightage. This is very important, specifically when you are given a specific time and duration in which you have to complete the paper, right? That means you cannot go overboard in 10-marker question, even despite of knowing too much about it, right? And in 15-marker, you can't write a 10-marker, you have to stretch somewhere, right? So this is what you have to understand. Now, coming to understand and decoding the UPSC art and culture syllabus, and how questions have been coming over the years, how much marks weightage UPSC is giving to this section, right? So when we see the UPSC main syllabus, there are 2 things mentioned. Indian heritage and culture, which is too wide, right? And second, they have given certain keywords within which you have to limit your preparation, right? So it says Indian culture will cover the salient aspects of art forms, literature, and architecture from ancient to modern times. Now, these keywords, art forms, literature, architecture, is a static portion which you will do temporally. You all understand what is temporal? From a timeline, chronologically, because the syllabus says ancient to modern times. That means art forms can be given as a question, where a question can entail information from your end, whether you understand the relevance of art forms from ancient to till today. Just to give you an example, let's say performing arts. So art forms has different forms. Classical dances is one of the ancient performing arts in India. So they can ask you a question on the relevance of classical dances in today's context, right? There have been questions on these lines where they are expecting out of you, you understand culture from ancient to modern times and its link and relevance till date, right? So these are few things which you have to keep in mind when you are preparing this subject, right? Now coming to the nature of the questions, whether they are linked with syllabus or not, the marks weightage to this section over the years. So if you analyze the previous 5 years trend, there have been, a seesaw kind of a marks weightage given to art and culture section. So in 2017, there was only one question of 10 mark. In 2018, there was suddenly 35 mark weightage given, where 3 questions were there. Then again 10, then 50, then 10, and this year 40 marks, right? So there is a very skewed distribution to art and culture, which makes this subject touch me not kind. Even if you touch, I will be not available to you, right? And even if you don't touch, then you will be not having me. So that kind of relationship is what you can see from marks weightage given by UPSC to this section. But it's an important subject, reason being you prepare it for prelims as well. In prelims, art and culture has a huge weightage, which makes this subject much more easier if you prepare it for prelims and then you do it from mains perspective, right? Secondly, if you see the kind of questions which are coming, I told you in the syllabus it's mentioned ancient to modern times, or there is a temporal approach. So in 2017, there was a question on art form. Numismatic art is an art form, coinage art. So the question was, how do you justify the view that the level of excellence of Gupta numismatic art is not at all noticeable in later times? Again, the keyword here is how. How do you justify that the level of excellence that Gupta numismatic coins had is not noticeable in later times, right? Similarly, if you again see in 2018, this is a present time context or relevance what they are expecting from you. Safeguarding the Indian art heritage is the need of the moment. Comment. What is the importance of safeguarding Indian art and heritage? Now these things you have to understand. Why are you studying art and culture? What is its relevance? How it's related, or it's, the excellence has surpassed or whether it has declined. So all these things become very important. Similarly, so there are again static questions as well. For example, Bhakti movement received a remarkable reorientation with the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Either you know it or you don't know it. It's content-driven question, right? Similarly, in 2019, highlight the Central Asian and Greco-Bactrian elements in Gandhar art. Content-driven question, either you know it or you don't know it, right? So there are different type of questions. If you see the analysis, these are the keywords mentioned in the syllabus. Art forms, Indian art and heritage, art forms, architecture, literature. These are the things from where questions are being asked. What is challenging is how they are portraying and how they are asking the question and how you are understanding after reading the topic. That is what you have to hone, right? Now coming to understanding what should be the sources and how you need to hone and learn the subject, I'll discuss after discussing this year's question. But rest assured, after understanding this year's question, you will make sense of approaching this section from UPSC perspective, right? So let's see this year's questions. So there are 3 questions in the paper. From Indian culture and heritage, there were 2 questions, question 12 and 13. And from art form, there is one question of a 10 marker, right? So total weightage this year was 40 marks, right? So let's discuss the first question of the paper. So the first question is, how will you explain that medieval Indian temple sculptures represent the social life of those days, right? How will you explain? So when someone asks you how to explain, how do you explain? By giving examples, right? So this question is basically of the second category which I told you. When you learn the static, you need to apply that, right? So I told you that there are three kinds of questions. So this question is basically an analytical question which is stemming out of your understanding of static topic called medieval Indian temple sculptures, right? In a question, there are two things, keywords, which you always have to keep in mind. Usually what happens is when you're writing means, the moment you read the question, you might skip medieval and you only center around Indian temple sculptures, which might have happened, right? So this is very important because this is the theme of the question. You need not go beyond the theme, you need not go, anywhere else but sticking to medieval Indian temple sculptures. Then, what should be the answer approach to this question? There can be two approaches. So the question is, medieval Indian temple sculptures, how do they explain the social life of those days, right? That means either you base your answer with the kind of social life you can infer from the themes which you know. One could be your religion, that you find religious themes on the sculptures, temple sculptures. You find social customs displayed on the theme, on the sculptures, like marriage, festivals, right? You also see on the sculptures of medieval Indian temples themes like economic life, exchange of commodities, or cultivation of crops. You also see, within social customs, you can also add Devdasi tradition, right? You can also write within this answer approach themes like there were themes of a Shishya Guru Parampara. But when you adopt this approach, what you need to do is, because the question is explain, you need to have specific examples of this, which is very difficult. You all may know these things in general also, but it's difficult to pick example of every aspect. That's why the second approach is better, where you start your answer with how medieval Indian temple sculptures represent the various facets of social life, be it society, religion, culture, economy, full stop. Second, you start with your medieval Indian time period, starting from Pallavas to Chandelas, to Cholas, to Vijayanagar. And there you mention the important temples and themes. You can also give example of, themes like prominence given to king in society. So there were many temples which were having kings of those times sculpted, right? So by giving such examples, you can fetch more marks. Yes, you can within them. You can. Because it is a 10 marker, you can't write more, right? But you need to explain somewhere or the other these things and just write general examples over here. Because the question is, how do you explain the social life? So all these aspects should be in between, and generic examples which you know of the popular temple sculptures, themes, like when you talk about Mahabalipuram, Pallava's descent of Ganges, Arjuna's penance, it also reflects, fight between right versus wrong, where Arjuna is punished, right? Morals, all these aspects will become very generic, but examples of different temples of different times is what you will write, right? So this should be your answer approach. So introduction, as I said, you can just write it very simply that the temples from ancient to medieval times represent the social life of the people, ranging from culture, religion, society, economy, education, etc. So temples not only served as place for worship, but they also represented a way of life for them. Way of life matlab culture, right? So all the temples in North and South India were decorated with sculptures. So Pallavas from 3rd to 9th century, Mahabalipuram sculpture, main themes. In there you add religious themes. It represents the religious beliefs of those times. It represents Arjuna's penance, represents the fight between right and wrong, morals, right? Then you talk about Chandela dynasty, Khajuraho, right? So again, these are important examples which you have to give. Agriculture ka example, you can just quote Chandela's Khajuraho temple, right? How people, pursued eroticism. Again, you can give example of Chandela's, Khajuraho temple. Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain influence of different faiths and beliefs could also be seen in different medieval times. Again, example you can give. Then Chola's, dance. So there was dance, there was Devdasi tradition, right? All these aspects is what you will bring in. But the most important thing is, how do you highlight and underline those social aspects more, right? Which was the core demand of the question. Okay? Then conclusion can be like this. Again, it should be temporal. Tracing the history of sculptures from ancient to medieval times gives us an idea that how the reconstruction of the history of the past can be done. Because sculptures, again, gives us an important, valuable source of history, right? Then comes question number 12. Very easy, very direct question. Hana? When you read culture, you read Gupta period. Why? Because it is considered as the golden age of art and culture in various fields. Similarly, Chola period is also a landmark dynasty which played a huge role in Indian art and heritage, and that was the question, right? So very easy, direct, static, content-driven question, very easy question, 15-marker question, and I feel that whoever has written mains would not have found any problem in writing an answer to this question, right? What was the directive to this question? Discuss. Discuss usually means that you have to bring in different dimensions or aspects or perspectives to that topic. So when the question is asking you the contribution of Gupta and Chola in art and culture or Indian art and heritage, that means the first part and the second part will entail the different dimensions of art and culture, right? So contribution of Gupta in literature, contribution of Gupta in architecture, contribution of Gupta in art forms, whether it's paintings, whether it is dance, whether it is numismatics or coinage. Then its contribution in science and tech, right? Contribution of Aryabhat Vara, Mira, right? Similarly, on these lines, your second part of your answer would be Cholas, their contribution in literature, their contribution in bronze sculpture, Nataraj, paintings, temple architecture, right? So it was a very easy and direct question. So simply me telling you answer will make no sense. I'm just giving you an idea through the slides that this is what was the content that should have been written, because it was a very easy question. Okay? So when you're writing Gupta period, you'll talk about literature. Kalidas has to be mentioned, right? Revival of Sanskrit, then Patanjali's work and Panini's work in Sanskrit grammar has to be mentioned. When you talk about architecture, Nagara style, temple architecture is again very important. So there are very important terms, very important landmark contribution. If you miss out, then you may miss out on marks. Otherwise, this was a very easy question. Okay? Then comes your last question, which is a bit tricky one. Tricky one because this is a question which you usually don't expect, right? But there is a story behind it, which I'll let you know. So the question is, discuss the significance of lion and bull figures in Indian mythology. So first of all, significance of lion and bull in mythology, art and architecture. Now again, there are two approaches. Either you separately write about lion and then bull. You write them together, or you differentiate between mythology, art and architecture separately and art and architecture together. I feel again, because of lack of points and at that point of time, spontaneity is what is important. You should club it in terms of importance of lion and bull figures in mythology, one, and second category will be lion and bull in art and architecture, right? Now this is a type of question which was a third category, where the current affairs inspiration is what was at the back of the mind of the examiner who set the question. You must be going through the newspapers where a controversy was given with respect to the Central Vista project, an installation of Ashoka's or Sarnath's lion image over the top of the parliament building, right? And the controversy was that the Sarnath's lion, which were at Ashoka's capital, were different from what have been made today, right? They are more fiercely looking, they are more aggressive, right? So there was this controversy. One inspiration behind asking the significance of lion in art and culture. But what usually UPSC does, when they are framing question, they ask from different dimensions, just to make it a question of art and culture and not current affairs, right? Second news why bull was also picked up was this, that Prime Minister in June gifted Nandi-themed Dokra art to Argentina's president during Germany visit. So when Prime Minister does anything, gift something of a shawl, or let's say, an image like this or an art like this, then also, you have to be very keen-eyed to know that question can be there in mains. Usually this trend is followed in prelims, but this is being followed in mains as well, right? So when you're doing this, bull or Nandi, you all know, is an important figure which you must have read when you started your ancient Indian history, from the time period of Bhimbetka caves, a scene from fighting of a man with the bull, right? Then in Mohenjo-daro or in Harappa civilization or Indus Valley civilization, there were seals having the figure of bull, right? Similarly, when you talk about Indian mythology, bull or Nandi is considered to be the consort or the vehicle of gods like Shiva or, Ma Durga. Okay? So such linkages is what now they are expecting. So there are certain things which you can prepare from your books. And then there are certain things which are aspects of your mythology or Indian culture. And the things which I'm telling you, it's not as if you've never visited any temple or you've not seen Ramayana or Mahabharata or you've never, listened from your parents any mythological character and its importance. It's just that you need to be, very much with the society, with yourself, how your family thinks, how Indian culture is given importance to, right? So these are the things which you now have to look into when you're preparing Indian art and culture from UPSC perspective. And because of the, stances or actions or policies being taken by the government, they are very much, towards, recreating and reinventing and, making you all guys understand about the relevance of Indian art and culture or Indian culture and heritage, right? That's why such questions are coming. So now when you read articles from the newspaper from pre and mains perspective, this is what 360-degree perspective you need to have. Simply leaving this news for prelims will not suffice. But what now you can do from different dimensions, the significance of bull or Nandi is what you will prepare, right? As I told you, it's not as if you don't know from the books. So for example, significance of bull in art and architecture. I told you in Bhimbetka caves, there is a scene of man fighting with the bull. Seals and ceilings of Indus Valley depict, bull as one of the figures. Then on coins also, bull is represented. In many emblems like, bull capital of Ashoka at the abacus, you have representation of bull, right? In mythology, as I told you, it is considered to be the, vehicle of Lord Shiva, Ma Durga. Bull is also the symbol of first Jain Tirthankar, right? Lion, again, when you talk about mythology, it is considered avatar of Vishnu. In Buddhism, lion is a symbol of bodhisattvas. In paintings and numismatics, again, lion was depicted, right? So what you can do, as I told you, that you need to integrate to have more points. So significance in Indian mythology, both bull and lion together. In Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, right? So when you talk about Buddhism, you mentioned that Buddhism or lion is used as a symbol of protector. Birth symbol of Lord Buddha is bull. When you talk about Hinduism, then you can talk about bull and lion together, right? Lord Shiva seated on a lion's skin, Ma Durga on the lion, right? In Jainism, as I told you, Tirthankar, first Tirthankar is represented by bull. In Sikhism, Sikh represents bravery and courage. So in different aspects of different faiths and religion, you can club your significance of bull and lion in Indian mythology, art and culture, art and architecture, right? So like this, you can make your answer. Okay. Now coming to the most crucial point, key takeaways and how to prepare and what are the sources or what should be the sources looking at the previous trend of art and culture section. First thing first, stay with the basic books. You should not pick any book, new book, which has been promoted by any author just in the wake of learning Indian culture. No. Practice the test series. Why? Because it gives you how in different ways a question can be asked. Second, it also makes you unable to understand how answers are to be written vis-a-vis 10 marker or 12.5 or 15 marker, which is very important again. Third thing, time constraint is what you learn. Next thing which is important is that, usually aspirants, as I told you, have this tendency of not doing too much in art and culture. But I would suggest that if you stick to your basic books and syllabus, at least prepare your syllabus from your basic textbooks. That will also suffice apart from your newspaper or current affairs. And link your static with your current affairs because of the recent trend in which we are seeing. An example which I would like to give you as to how to prepare a topic and how to decode it so that you become comfortable and easy in other keywords or parts mentioned in the syllabus. First of all, as I told you, you need to have a chronological time frame or temporal approach while preparing history, whether it's art and culture or modern or post-Indian independence or world history, right? Because in specifically, if you talk about art and culture, it talks about ancient to modern times. They can also ask you about modern architecture. Then you cannot say कि भाई books में तो बस till medieval it was mentioned. When you're reading modern Indian history, in modern Indian architecture, what do you see? You see forts, you see educational universities, you see what? Again, banks, railways, they are all part of modern structures, architecture, right? So from medieval, ancient, you simply jump to more utilitarian architecture, right? That's how you have to understand things. So the story of architecture first started with caves, temples, then Indo-Islamic architecture, forts also got to be constructed during Deccan Sultanate stage, like Fort of Bidar, Gol Gumbaz, right? And then when you enter into modern Indian period, you see structures which are more utilitarian, like as I told you, forts, military colleges, universities, uh, banks, railways. That's how you have to make first a broad framework within a topic and then you go deep into it, right? So this was an example, but more precisely, let's say we have to prepare art forms. So there are three kinds of art form: visual art, performing art, literary art, right? Let's take up an example of visual art, painting. So when you start painting, there are two types of painting, mural and miniature. Mural paintings are those paintings which you see on walls or drawn on walls, like of caves. So you have cave temple paintings. You have mural starting from Bhimbetka caves. Then you have modern period Harappan, Gupta's, Dravidian. What were the kind of paintings you see? So when you see Gupta's, you have to write Ajanta paintings, bark paintings, right? Similarly, when you prepare miniature paintings, you have to start with Palas. You have to focus on Mughals. You have to do different schools of painting in miniature paintings. You can also not skip modern school of paintings because again, as I told you, the syllabus says ancient to modern times, right? So that's how you go in depth. But before that, you need to broadly understand that topic, that how the story begins and how it ends, right? Now coming to the credible sources. So sources are infinite, but what I am talking about are the credible ones, which will give you confidence to write mains and sit for UPSC exam, both for prelims and mains, right? Source number one, CCRT website. Why? Because it directly gives you topics of the syllabus. So literature you have as a keyword in the syllabus. What does it say? Indian literature through the ages. That means it gives you a glimpse of Indian literature from ancient to modern times. So when you read this, you don't take it to your heart and mind कि मुझे ये सब समझना ही है. No. What I am trying to emphasize here is first make a story and a timeline and a broad understanding. Don't go too deep in it. How was the ancient Indian literature? How was the Sanskrit literature? How was literature in Pali and Prakrit? How was Dravidian literature? What was medieval literature? What were the main themes? What was the kind of messages or stories did they give, right? Because these are the questions which UPSC will ask. You remember there was a question on Persian literary sources as well, literature. So it is part of your medieval Indian literature. ठीक है? तो CCRT क्या कर रही है? It's giving you the syllabus keywords and you just have to read it to make a desirable understanding, right? Then it also gives you visual arts like Indian architecture, how it started from Indus civilization, Buddhist, temple, Indo-Islamic modern. यही तो मैं बोल रही हूँ, right? Indian sculpture, medieval school of sculpture, question तो है ही है ये in the paper, right? Now, the idea is that don't blame me if you don't get content for the question which UPSC ask, right? So if I say medieval school of sculpture, you do get some information from CCRT website, but you may not get exact information. So what we are trying to do is you make your base and understanding first and then go deeper, right? Then you have performing arts, dances, music, theatre, puppet forms. तो अगर आप ये कर रहे हो, a suitable chunk of your art and culture is being prepared according to the syllabus. Because if you read NCRTs, NCRTs are not written like this. But it is a must. So another source for you to read art and culture is your old NCRT R.S. Sharma. Why? Because within dynasties, so for example, there has been a question on construction of ancient Indian history coinage. Gupta coinage pe question tha. So it's there in your NCRT. Now how much content is there? That we are not dwelling into. But my point is that you do get certain ideas from your NCRT. So these are the credible sources first you should pick. And then practice different type of questions through the test series. Okay? Similarly, when you do Harappan civilization, you have different aspects of culture. When you do Aryans, you have aspects of culture. Within them, you focus on the cultural aspects, right? Understood? Similarly, science and civilization, again an important aspect of art and culture. You get it in your NCRT. Then this is another NCRT, new NCRT, Themes in Indian History Part 1 and 2. Again important, reason being there has been a question on reconstruction of India's past through Chinese and Arab travelers' account. You get a chapter, you have a specific chapter in your medieval India textbook through the eyes of travelers, right? So you get accounts of Chinese and Arab travelers on India. So there was a direct question from this chapter which you could have used, right? So my idea to reinforce using NCRT is primarily based on this fact or objective reality that you do get questions and understanding from your NCRT. Rest you leave it to God, which is how people do. Basic ही नहीं करोगे तो फिर कुछ भी नहीं होगा. Then other aspect which I told you was to understand the current affairs topics from static point of view, right? Another important book which is dedicated to art and culture is Introduction to Indian Art Part 1. Chapters are on art and culture syllabus, dedicated to art and culture. Another new book has come, Introduction to Indian Art Part 2. Part 2, which is only on paintings. This is another area which UPSC can explore. Static wise also and contemporary dynamic wise also how. Because in the 8th chapter, there is a mention of living art traditions of India, right? So that means you have to focus on paintings of tribals or folk paintings or GI tag paintings or how paintings are restored and used on metro pillars, railway stations, airports. This is a new understanding of, you know, how we are revisiting Indian culture in the modern structures, right? You see paintings on railways, you see paintings on in the airport, right? Which are using our themes of folk art, which is again, you know, you can write if a question comes like this, that how Indian folk paintings are being revived, right? Then there is a book called A.L. Bacham Wonder That Was India. There are few chapters again which you can do from mains point of view again, because these are the topics which you don't get usually in your NCRT. Again, astronomy, mathematics, physics and chemistry, logic, philosophy, coinage, you have separate chapters for it. You have separate chapters on religion, art, language and literature, sculpture, architecture, painting, music and dance. Again, just to add on the content, right? So that was it. If you have any questions, you can ask me with respect to art and culture. Are all the questions solved? There is no query in your mind? Yes. NCRT 11 standard, yes. Okay. So when we come to sources, as I said, there are more to what I have told you, right? There is Tamil Nadu history textbooks. There is a very popular book prescribed by the toppers, Nitin Singhania's book on Indian culture, right? There are other sources like Upinder Singh's book as well, right? There are books written by, Satish Chandra on different aspects of medieval Indian society. Sources are many, right? What we are trying to understand is that you do first the basics, but if you find, let's say, Nitin Singhania book which can give you every information or maximum information, do that. If you feel Tamil Nadu history textbooks are more simpler to read, you do that. But please keep this thing in mind. Ultimately, you have to write the answer, right? If by reading a source is helping you in writing answer of UPSC, then go with that. I'm not telling you to skip or any book, but these are the sources which you have to do, right? Coming to your question, can you substitute 11th NCRT with Tamil Nadu history textbooks? Tamil Nadu history textbooks can be done selectively for South Indian history. South Indian history is not considerably covered in your NCRT, so you can use Tamil Nadu history textbooks for South Indian history specifically, because there are questions even in ancient time period and medieval time period in UPSC on South Indian history, right? So there is Chola art, Sangam polity, there was a question. There was a question on Vijayanagar, Krishnadev Raya's contribution on literature, right? So there are certain aspects of South Indian history which, if you get in South Indian history, Tamil Nadu textbooks, you do that, right? What I would suggest that if literature is there and you are dividing it into different time periods, so when you divide it in different time periods, you get different dynasties. Just to give you an example, Vijayanagar, okay, literature. So when you're doing Vijayanagar dynasty, which is an important dynasty, in literature, you have to do Krishnadev Raya. So that question which came on Ashtadiggaj and with Krishnadev Raya, great patron of learning and literature, that question did not come from any book. That question came from the approach which I'm telling it to you to adopt for art and culture. If you do temporally, you will not skip any dynasty and the contributors within that dynasty. But if you do book-wise what is given, then you may skip. Okay? So this is what you have to do. So all the best, guys. Have a nice day. I hope it will help you in preparing art and culture for future.